please welcome the wickedly talented one and only
Emily.
So the Wicked book and the Wicked musical are about as similar as LaCroix and whatever flavor they're trying to tell you is in the can. Some major differences include, but are not limited to, she has a brother. The parents were in a polyamorous throuple. Glinda isn't really that popular. Dr. Dillamond is straight up murdered. Fiyero is murdered and isn't turned into the Scarecrow. Elphaba has a son, along with tons of internal monologues and just, I suppose, the author monologuing about religion and politics and who deserves what rights and morals and all that kind of fun ethical dilemma stuff. For a book claiming to be the life and times of the Wicked Witch of the West, it's just interesting that we don't actually shift to her point of view until about halfway through the book. And I remember why I don't really like the second half of the book. It's because nothing happens. See, for the first half, you're meeting major characters. You're learning about the world and its lore and political intrigue and assassination attempts. And there's a lot of character relationships and there's a lot of drama and exciting things happening. But then in the second half, Elphaba just dips to the Vincus, which is the part of Oz that Fiyero is from, and just kind of hangs out with his widow and kids. Oh, by the way, Fiyero was married as the crown prince. He was married off when he was 12. So, but yeah, we're in the Vincus, and it feels like nothing really happens, just by comparison's sake. I mean, at one point, Elphaba's son almost drowns, and then one of Fiyero's sons sees the naked body of the boy trying to be resuscitated and everything, and he, quote, began to feel very funny in his trousers for the first time in his life. Which, okay, a couple things there. So the characters don't know this, but they are indeed half-brothers. Both of them are, at that time, as far as the text has indicated, I think, 12. Nothing comes of this, so why have it? The Fiyero son that has those feelings dies in 30 pages. So it's
Why?
Anyway, nothing happens at the Vincus. The only thing that is happening is Elpha's trying to study magic, and she has her monkey that she's sewing wings onto to see if it'll fly, and she's trying to teach him how to speak, to see if capital A animal level of intelligence can be taught, whether or not it's it's ingrained. But and those sound interesting concepts to be exploring, but it feels like it all happens off screen, even though we're with Ethel. Just the way it's written is really weird. And then towards the end of this section, she flies back to Munchkinland to see her family, and while she's there, off screen or off page, I guess, the entire Fiyero's family is kidnapped, presumed murdered. She gets back and the castle's empty, and it's I'm sorry, something happened and we missed it? We've been here for so long and nothing has happened. Ah! And so this thing happens off page, and it's okay, well, that sucks. And then we jump forward 5 years to Dorothy's arrival. And there's a ton of time jumps in this book. A ton of time jumps. The whole first section is about Elphaba's parents immediately preceding her birth. And then we get a good chunk of her time at school. And then we get a little bit of her in the city as a sort of underground assassin, part of the resistance kind of thing. And then nothing happens in the Vincus for 10 years. Literally. And then Dorothy is there, and Elphaba's dead within a few days. Here's a fun little chart showing the makeup of the book with those different sections. Okay, and part of the problem with not having your main character be the point of view character until the most boring section means that you miss out on a lot of important inner monologuing. In her time at school, The main point of view characters are Galinda and Bach, and she's not very open with either of them. Like, you get that she is passionate about, like, capital A animal rights and causes and these sort of political issues, but you never get anything more than that, just that surface level understanding. And then in the Emerald City, during Fiero's point of view, you know that she's part of a resistance movement, but she and Fiero are intentionally, explicitly not talking about it, because she says if she tells him, that would make him a target if she's ever found out, which makes sense, but it's frustrating as a reader to be left out. And anyway, she is found out and he's murdered, so whoops. And then, finally, we're at the Vincus. We get her point of view, but nothing happens. She locks herself away to study magic, and the majority of the conflict of this whole section is internal conflict with the characters that we're just now meeting and die at the end of the section, so it's like it didn't really even matter in the first place. And then, okay, so the last interaction that Elphaba has with the wizard of the two that we know that she has, because she goes to see him at the end of the shiz section to be like, hey, capital A animals should have rights, and he's like, no. And that's when she becomes part of the resistance. And then the second time, which is much later at her sister's funeral, he comes because the sister was an important, like, political figure in Munchkinland, and he wants to annex Munchkinland. Like, an interesting political, like, but it happens off screen and we never really learn about it. Anyway, he tells her that he wants her magic book because the magic book came from his world, which we know to be our world. And that's why she can't really understand it. And he's like, I can understand it because I and the book are from the same world. Which begs the question, okay, Elphaba has this magic book about unleashing the hidden energies of matter and tampering with the orderly flow of time. So, is it our world? Because I don't know about you guys, but I've never seen any instances of that being at all possible in our world. And how can it be our world? Because she talks about how she refers to her magic book in order to sew the wings onto the monkeys, and the wings work and the monkeys can fly. So it's like, how? Anyway, all this to say, Elphaba isn't the easiest protagonist to really understand or really empathize with. She is fully dedicated to her own sense of justice and morals, and she will hold a grudge until the ends of the earth. Which, cool. We like that in a protagonist. We like protagonists with who are headstrong, who have strong feelings that they will follow through on. But for whatever reason, she'll dick around in the Vincus for like 10 years while the wizard titles himself emperor, and capital A animal rights are stripped down to basically nothing. And then her sister is killed, and her lover's family is killed, and all of this happens to her. And so what does she do? She goes off to Oz and gets drunk with an old school friend and is like, well, that sucked. And then she'll just go back to the stupid Vincus to just wait for her own demise. It doesn't make sense. It's like the author, Gregory Maguire, has no issue in making the character of Elphaba this really interesting and motivated character when we're not in her head. But the second we switch to her point of view, he's just incapable of doing it? I don't know. Anyway, I also own this book, which is about the making of the musical. So I wanted to look at how they made the musical, because it feels like when you're reading this and you know the story of the musical, it feels like they just took a couple of ideas that they liked, and that's what became the story. And wouldn't you know it? So what I'm about to read is a quote from Winnie Holzman, who is the writer of the book of the musical. And for those not in the know, the book of a musical is the written word and the overarching story of the entire show. as opposed to the lyrics and the score. Those are the three parts of a musical. That's lyrics are the sung word, score is the music itself, and then the book is the spoken word and the overarching story. Okay, cool. Anyway, she has to say, after reading the book, I put it aside. I couldn't be too tied to what happened in it, so we sort of stole things that we just had to have. That's not how you adapt stories. And then from Gregory Maguire, the author of the book, he says, why should Wicked the musical slavishly conform to my novel, when my novel itself was a playful deviation of the original Baum novel with glancing references to the movie? I had no problem with Stephen Schwartz, who wrote the music and lyrics, Stephen and Winnie taking the material and making it their own. See, here's the thing. It's okay to say that this is a reinterpretation of the L. Frank Baum novels. Fun fact, if you didn't know, the reason her name is Elphaba is because it's L. Frank Baum. Elphaba. Yeah. And then paint it as your own, like, this is Wicked Witch of the West. Like, it points at it, but it's not saying it's, oh, this is Wizard of Oz. This Wizard of Oz. Basically the same. But to then say this and this musical here, they're the same thing. No, they're not. And it's frustrating to say that they are. You can say it's loosely based off of the novel, but you can't say it's the same thing, because I feel like that's false advertising, which is annoying. So at the very end of the day, I wonder what they're going to change for the movie, what they're going to add. Because I've seen some interviews saying they're going to we're going to do a mashup of the musical and the book. And I'm like, they are two completely different stories. Are we going to, oh my gosh, and because it's broken up into two movies, are we going to have the whole first half of the second movie be her at the Vinkus? Oh my gosh, no. My next book is The Bear and the Nightingale, which was given to me on recommendation by a friend. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to try and do the sequels, see how they are. Son of a Witch is about her son. His name is Lear. It's spelled Liir. So in my head, I've pronounced it as Lear. It could be liar. I have no idea. And then Lion Among Men is about the lion, obviously. And I'm interested. They were both written and published after the musical, came out and was big and successful. So I wonder, rather than being a sequel to their predecessor, they're sequels of the musical that is based on the This is a book based on a book, based on a movie, based on a book, on a musical, and there's so many adaptations and differences in story and hands, and oh my gosh.